Welcome back to the city, friends and friends of yet to meet. Glad you're joining me and hope you're having a good night and even better week. Whether you are or you're not, I'm here for you and I got some stories. This week's episode is a bit of a break from the usual. Most of the time I'm telling stories from my own first-person point of view, most of them based off of real-life stuff. This week I decided to do a little bit of world building, or so we say in the D&D world, which I am very much a part. Every city, every town, every place, especially the old places, have lore. Folk stories handed down from generation to generation. Some are told by old grandpas around a campfire, some are told in the schoolyard. City of Phear isn't that much different. There's plenty of old stories that get retold and become part of the fabric of the city itself. Tonight I've got two such tales for you. I hope you enjoyed them. Enough of my yapping though. Let's get into it. Here's your first story of the night. I call it A House Call Romance Story. In a small affluent section of the City of Phear lived a young woman of 16. She was a sad and lonely young woman. She was the only child of Charles and Marie Fletcher. She grew up never knowing her father, who had died while she was only 3 years old in the Battle of Antietam, fighting Mr. Lincoln's war to preserve the Union. He was a captain, Mother always told her when she was drunk off wine and staring into the fireplace. One of the only, but frequently occurring occasions she ever showed a semblance of kindness or mirth. As long as Clarissa knew her mother, Maria Fletcher had been a cold and hard woman, quick with the hand or the switch, but not so much in showing any sense of affection to her only child. Had she always been this way, or was this the natural result of a grieving widow who had her whole life ahead of her with a well-to-do husband, only to be suddenly left with a small waning fortune the family had allotted her and a daughter to raise alone? Clarissa was a quiet child, fragile and meek and quick to jump at any sudden noise. She was raised mostly by the help and hardly allowed outside of the house during her childhood. In between lessons from private tutors, she watched through the windows as children played in the streets. She longed for the opportunity to escape and live the life of a normal child. This she wouldn't have, as her mother ruled the household with an iron fist, and even the servants, who would look upon poor Clarissa with sympathy, would not dare take the risk incurring the wrath of the lady of the house, or risk losing their income. Years went on and things unfortunately did not improve for Clarissa as she grew. She became even more quiet and anxious, jumping at even the slightest mention of her name. Simultaneously, her mother steadily became even more disagreeable, and at times violently irritable as a result likely of the family money beginning to dry up and the worsening of her recurring headaches. The only silver lining to this horrible situation Clarissa found herself in was that Mother had started having Dr. Pierce visit her on a regular basis to administer treatment, generally a mix of opium and morphine to help ease her suffering. Every time Dr. Pierce came to the house, Clarissa took delight in knowing that her mother would be sedated and too wary to unleash her abuse for at least a day or two, while also being able to gaze upon the handsome young Dr. Pierce from some corner of the house. For the first year, Clarissa would often make herself scarce and try not to be seen whenever Dr. Pierce would come around. As she grew in age and grew bolder, she started making herself more seen. She would greet the doctor on his way into the house and up to her mother's bedroom, where Mrs. Fletcher now spent the majority of her days. At first, Dr. Pierce seemed to only show Clarissa a brief moment or two of interest, merely exchanging polite pleasantries. Over time, she noticed that he spent more time talking to her. The way he looked at her seemed to change too. Clarissa had felt a whirlwind of emotions. Was she in love with Dr. Pierce? Her heart fluttered every time he walked through the door, and every time he had left, she felt a deep sadness, knowing she would have to wait a whole week to see him again. This is love, right? It must be, she told herself. This was the closest thing she felt for anyone that was like what she had read in the romance novels she had used as an escape from her lonely existence. The treatments kept Mother incapacitated, and the medicine the doctor left kept her mostly confined to her room. Clarissa could now freely roam the house without fear of her mother's wrath, but having spent the majority of her life indoors, was still too afraid to venture outside. She spent her days passing the time reading, looking out the window, and waiting for the weekly arrival of Dr. Pierce. She fantasized about the day that she would greet him at the door and he would look into her eyes and fall madly in love with her. Maybe he would start leaving love letters. Maybe he would have some grand proposal planned to surprise her. He would take her away from the prison she had lived her entire life. Clarissa lived for this fantasy and lived for those house calls. She started dressing up, putting on makeup, which she had never done in her life prior to coming to the realization that Dr. Pierce was her soulmate. She waited patiently, and upon each visit, she started to try to flirt with the doctor, though she didn't quite know what flirting was supposed to look like. She read through her books furiously, trying to find inspiration and ideas. Then one day, without giving much effort, it finally happened. After administering the treatment to Mrs. Fletcher, Dr. Pierce came down the stairs and approached Clarissa. Her heart skipped a beat as he told her that her mother had a particularly bad headache and needed to be given a double dose of the medication. He let her know that she would be asleep for a long time and would not be bothered or awakened by sound. She wouldn't awaken at even the most frightful scream. Without any precursor, he had grabbed her around her waist and kissed her. And he took her. It was not as she had expected. It was rough and quick. It was what she had wanted, but not in the way she wanted. Not at all. He pulled up his pants and, without a word, picked up his medicine bag and left through the front door. Was this love? She asked herself. She pondered this briefly, but didn't have much time or anyone to talk to before it happened again. And again. Every week that the doctor came to treat her mother and leave her with medications that left her lying in bed barely able to speak or rise for nearly the entire week until he returned again. Oh, this must be love, Clarissa told herself. It was less than 3 months of these weekly visits that Clarissa found herself throwing up and feeling nauseous. She hadn't had her courses for the last 50 days or so. She hadn't thought anything of it at first, but upon the increasing in vomiting had mentioned it to one of the servants, who took the laundry, to which the servant replied, "You're with child, my dear. Who is the lucky man?" Clarissa was full of joy. She had met the man of her dreams, the man who would take her away from this prison. They had fallen madly in love, after all. He would surely propose upon hearing the good news and marry her. They would have a family together and live happily ever after. She anxiously awaited the doctor's next visit. He came through the doors, went upstairs to administer treatment to her mother without a word to her. She waited patiently while this took place, hearing the footsteps on the floor above. Her heart skipped a beat as she heard the footsteps of the doctor now coming down the stairs. He turned to meet her gaze with the usual lustful look in his eyes. As he grabbed her and began to push against her, she stopped him. Joyous tears in her eyes, she told him about the wonderful news and how they would be a family and be happy together forever. Now, as most of you are already anticipating, she did not get the reaction she was hoping for. The doctor had jumped back in shock, denying the child was his, calling poor Clarissa a whore and running out the front door of the house. This left poor Clarissa in a devastated heap on the floor, tears of joy turning to sour tears of despair. The doctor didn't show for his usual scheduled time the next week, which left Clarissa questioning the fantasy she had built up. But just a few days after the doctor was regularly scheduled to arrive, she received a letter from him. "Clarissa, my dear." "Oh my," she thought, "my dear. It is a love letter, just as I had hoped for. My dreams are coming true." She continued to read. "My deepest apologies for my reaction upon sharing such wondrous news that we are going to have a child. Nothing in the world could make me any more joyous. We have to discuss what the future holds for us, but I fear your mother will not be happy. We should do it in private. Meet me at the fountain in the center of Palmer Park at midnight. Sincerely, your love." "Oh my, he plans to propose under the full moon tonight." Clarissa was full of glee all throughout the day, frantically trying on different dresses, trying to find the perfect one for the evening. Every time she had an encounter with one of the servants, she would tell them, "Today is a very good day, and tomorrow I will have the most wonderful news to share with all of you." As the sun went down and midnight approached, nothing could deter Clarissa's happiness. Not even her mother's screams and calls for Clarissa, which she had ignored. She was probably just agitated for lack of morphine. At 1:15, Clarissa left the house in a flowing and beautiful blue gown. She settled on this and the various pieces of jewelry hours earlier and had just been sitting in front of her mirror picturing the proposal. When she arrived at the park, there was no one in sight. She must be early, unless he had planned to surprise her. Given her propensity to stay to herself, she relished a more private setting for this occasion anyway. She walked around the fountain in the center of the park and heard before she saw. "Clarissa, my dear, is that you?" She looked and saw Dr. Pierce, in a fine suit, walking towards her. She smiled and greeted him with a curtsy. "I received your letter, Doctor," she said. "I'm so glad you had a change of heart, and I just wanted to know that my love for you—" "Shh," he said, reaching into his pocket. "You are very special to me, and I want to make you my bride. It was too short of a time to procure a proper ring, but hopefully this will do in the meantime." He held up a beautiful golden necklace. "Anything that represents our love, I will surely cherish." He stepped up to her and kissed her while holding the necklace in both hands. "Turn around and let me put the symbol of our love upon you." She did so, closing her eyes, tears of joy once again beginning to form. Clarissa felt the cold metal of the necklace dangle and fall upon her neck. She felt Dr. Pierce press himself against the back of her. Then she felt a quick, sharp pain in her neck, just below her chin. Then wetness. She reached her hand to her neck and immediately saw it covered in crimson. She had no moment to react or speak before she was pushed into the fountain. She didn't have the strength to get up, move, or yell out, and while her vision began to flash and then slowly fade, her last sight was of Dr. Pierce wiping a knife clean with a rag, turning and walking away. Her last thought was, but this was love, right? While there's no official name for the fountain at Palmer Park, it's known as either Clarissa's Fountain or the Breakup Fountain. Kids know this story, and kids can be cruel and disrespectful. They often use the place to break up with their high school boyfriends and girlfriends, kind of as a joke. It's said that times, though, during a full moon, if you get there just before midnight, you can see a hopeful young woman in a blue dress circling the fountain. Poor Clarissa. All she wanted was to be loved. Her life probably would have been a lot different if her father didn't fall in battle. But who's to say? This next story takes place a few decades later. It's not only influenced by war, but the invisible scars left over are at the heart of it. I call this one, The Boy Was a Soldier. It was the year 1919. The war had been over for almost a full year, and the troops were starting to come home. Thank all that is holy, that the war to end all wars was over, with a victory for the Allies. There had been joyous celebrations and parades in the streets of most major cities in the United States. While hearts yearned for home, it took some time to get all the boys who had survived the conflict back to where they wanted to be. Tommy had waited longer than some, less than others. was a long voyage from the front in northeastern France back to the States, but he was almost there. After many trains and a few ships, he was finally on the last train home. He would be back in his hometown of the City of Phear in a few hours. He couldn't wait to see his parents. He hoped he had made them proud. Above all else, he wanted to leave the horrors of the war behind him and get back to real life. It was a long train ride after getting back to the States. The entire way, he received sideways glances, overheard snide remarks. People were either laughing at him, afraid of him, somewhere in between, something else, or both. Tommy had no disillusionment about it. He knew he looked strange. Tommy still wore his M1917 gas mask he had used in the trenches. He hadn't taken it off since that one horrific day. He wasn't surprised at the reactions, as even though he wore one, every time the lads put theirs on, he watched them through his. It always startled him a bit. These masks were a frightful sight. You'd think they'd have come up with something that didn't look so terrifying. He tried to put the crowd's jeers and looks out of his mind as the train chugged along. Unfortunately, ignoring the outside world and sinking into his own mind had its own issues. Every time he did this, it brought him right back to the trenches. The boom of the artillery fire, the chatter, chatter, chatter of machine guns rattling, the constant yelling of orders between and throughout the trenches, the slopping sounds of boots in cold mud. Oh, that cold, wet mud. There wasn't a boot that could be made that could keep the water out. While almost every day was hell on earth, there were a few silver linings here and there. Between all of the horrid visions of his recent past, Tommy would have flashes of Prince Henry, the big black tomcat who was the unit's trench buddy. Tommy wasn't one to engage in the usual friendly banter the rest of his group did to pass the time and distract themselves from the carnage surrounding them, as he was a fairly quiet young man and had mostly kept to himself. Prince Henry took a liking to him, though. Generally spent his time rubbing against Tommy's legs and getting pets in between his duties of patrolling the trench for rats and guarding the food stores. Tommy held on to the hope that Prince Henry found a safe place to hide and survived, as he didn't see him for the last days that he was in the trench. Right when he didn't see much of anyone, after it was hit almost directly with an artillery shell full of mustard gas. The one event that took out most of his unit. It had been a surprise, and most weren't able to get their masks on quick enough. Tommy had been one of the few lucky ones. He had nightmares every night of the event ever since. Every night while in the trench nearly alone. Every night waiting for the brass to pull them out. Every night in the hospitals. Every night he slept took him back to those horrific days. He was easily rattled now and curled into a ball at any unexpected loud sound or movement registered out of the corner of his eye through the mask. Tommy hadn't taken off his M1917 since that day. He lived in it. He slept in it. It was as much a part of him as his ears and nose. It's what doctors would soon be calling shell shock, and as they were seeing this kind of thing in other eccentricities from soldiers returning home who'd experienced the worst of the war, they usually just allowed them. Weeks later, Tommy was settling into life back home, living in the small city house with his parents, speaking as few words as necessary to be polite. His parents were mostly respectful and didn't ask him for details about the war. They were careful around their boy, but their concerned glances between each other didn't escape Tommy. His father and mother spent the majority of their days at their respective factory jobs. He was grateful they were helping him while he didn't yet have the wherewithal to begin looking for work. Tommy had enough money to last him a few months from the army after returning home to get by, so long as he could continue living with his folks. He stayed inside most of the time, aside from taking a daily walk around the neighborhood to get some fresh air. He would frequently stop at his favorite diner, just a few blocks from home. The Red Line Diner was a simple place. It was a repurposed trolley car with booths opposite a long diner counter. He went in there almost every day since he had been home. Every single day he would order a pork roast sandwich and a cup of coffee, just like on the train back home. Diner goers would talk under their breaths, making comments about Tommy's appearance. Every day he ordered a sandwich, a cup of black coffee. Pick up a sandwich, stare at it, transfer it from hand to hand, put it down. He'd do the same with the cup of coffee. He'd generally stay in the diner for about an hour, never taking a sip, never taking a bite, and leaving with no more but a quick "thank you" to the waitress. After a little over a month or so of Tommy's appearances week to week, the sneers and jeers stopped, as just about everyone in the diner had become accustomed to Tommy. Many of them, also from the neighborhood, had known his family. Occasionally he'd hear an expression of sympathy or two. Poor lad. What a terrible war. I guess not everyone that comes home truly gets to come home, eh? That was the one that really stood out to him. Tommy got a little more courageous, fighting his shell shock and roaming the neighborhood and occasionally other neighborhoods, though this would generally be late at night when there were fewer folks around. On one occasion, late at night, he came across a homeless man that looked like he may have been about 10 years older than Tommy, drunk, unkempt, and unshaven, holding a sign that read, "Homeless veteran, any help would be appreciated." Tommy immediately felt grateful for the help he had from his family, thinking this easily could have been him and probably was the fate of many of his brothers who didn't die over there. Tommy dropped some coins in his cup. The man thanked him, barely paying attention to Tommy or his presentation. He had a faraway stare that Tommy recognized. He may be sitting against a building on the streets in the City of Phear, but he was living a double life, simultaneously right back in the trenches in Europe. Tommy walked down the street, going for his nightly stroll. As he was about to turn the corner of the block, he heard some yelling behind him. "Hey, get out of here, you bum!" "Yeah! Hey, old man, that war's over. I bet you didn't even fight in it." "What, you want some money for a drink? Why don't you dance for it?" He heard muffled sounds of the homeless man cursing and turned to watch three young men standing over the fellow pointing, laughing. Tommy quickly turned, while he usually only sauntered slowly, picked up his pace. Double time. He approached the biggest of the lads from behind, gripped the young man's shoulder, pressing his fingers hard into the flesh. The boy turned around ready to fight, but looked scared, pale as a ghost, when he saw Tommy with his mask. The boy along with his friends froze. Tommy slowly shook his head, back and forth.
"No,"
came with a slight hiss through the M1917. After 5 long seconds, the boys ran off down the street and disappeared around the corner of the block. Tommy looked down at the man, who looked up and finally saw him in his mask and all. "Thank you. Oh, thank you, brother. Wait, you too? You were over there, too, weren't you?" Tommy just nodded and walked away. Again, double time. He was half of the way on his way home when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw a group of young men walking quickly towards him. He recognized one as the kid he had stopped. There were 5 of them now, though. 2 much bigger guys that weren't there before. They surrounded him. He could smell alcohol coming off of them. "Hey, you freak show! What's the deal messing with our friend? We didn't do anything to you. Yeah, you trying to be some kind of hero?" Tommy looked back and forth, trying to keep an eye on all of them as they stepped forward and back. He knew he was in trouble, as he was on a dark street and didn't see anyone else around. He started breathing heavily through the mask. "What, you can't talk, you freak?" one of the young men shouted out. "Look at him, he belongs in a circus!" And all of them started laughing. They started pushing him. Tommy put his fists up, but it didn't matter. vision already obscured from the mask. He caught a good right hook from the side, just outside of his vision. It knocked him to the ground, and after a few of the lads kicked at him a couple of times, they piled on top, and he heard something that scared him worse than most things did these days. "Yeah, take that mask off of him. Let's see that ugly mug. We'll make it uglier when we're done with this wise guy." He felt them start gripping at his mask. Gripping and ripping, in between giving him shots to the ribs. He clutched onto it, trying to hold it down over his face. He tried with everything he had, but they kept punching, kicking, and tearing it away. Tommy's last words were the same as his words before. "No!" as they ripped the mask off of his face. The instant they did, there was a puff, a light brown miasma, that came shooting out of the mask. Tommy's face looked that of a corpse, long dead, and covered in bleeding blisters and sores. The men all started coughing, clutching their throats, and clawing at their burning faces as they fell to the ground writhing in pain. Nobody saw, nobody heard, and nobody in question made it. The police had a hell of a mystery on their hands, but they cleaned it up. Most of it was soon forgotten after the deaths were reported. So, many years later, people tell this tale of Tommy. It's said his spirit is still around. It's a damn shame that Tommy's war was, in fact, not the war to end all wars. There have been too many more since. Too many more sacrificed. Too many more forgotten and forsaken. Every once in a while, though, you'll hear an anecdote of a homeless veteran sleeping on the streets who wakes up with roast beef sandwich and a ceramic cup of coffee waiting for them. There you have it, episode 10 of City of Phear. It's pretty doubtful I'd ever get one full episode completed and put out there for people to hear, and now I'm in double digits. I'm so grateful to everyone who's given it a listen and for those who have given feedback. Family, friends, and as I often say, friends I've yet to meet. I'm really enjoying writing and producing this, and I'm going to keep it going as long as I can. I mentioned last episode that I've got just a few episodes left before I call it for the first season, take some time off so I can write and produce ahead of time so I can be more consistent with putting episodes out. So, once again, if you're a writer and would like your story featured on City of Phear, shoot me an email, cityoffear@gmail.com. Please put it in a Word document as that's the easiest for me to work with. If you enjoyed this episode or any other, please give me a like, thumbs up, or whatever's applicable for where you're listening. It takes just a couple of minutes, but helps me out a lot. Share it around too while you're at it. Stay tuned for the next couple of episodes before the first season ends. Also, in the meantime, check out one of my favorite podcasts and one of my biggest inspirations for doing this, The Wrong Station. They're celebrating 10 years, and this month they're releasing an episode every day, which, pretty incredible. Thank you all once again for taking a trip into the city tonight. I hope you're all enjoying the cooling of the weather and the thinning of the veil. And I hope to see you back real soon.